decisions are directional. They are not permanent. They just kind of take us in a direction. And then if that direction feels like we've gotten a little off course, then we just change the direction and change again. And that is how decisions actually work.
Hey lady, welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman podcast. Do you struggle with self-doubt, setting boundaries, or feeling overwhelmed? My name is Alyssa, and I'm a highly sensitive woman who spent years trying to fit in, ignoring my own needs, and living in constant fear of disappointing others. But I finally discovered the power of embracing who I am, and now I don't feel so broken. In this podcast, you'll learn to find your voice, set boundaries, and live with bold confidence and inner peace. Grab a cozy blanket. It's time to connect with someone just like you.
Welcome back to the Highly Sensitive Woman. I am just honored that you are all here, and the last year has just been absolutely incredible. And I just want to start with a review that made me feel all giddy inside, honestly. So this review: I love how calm and kind this podcast feels. The way Alyssa talks about sensitivity and boundaries made me feel understood and less alone. Any woman who feels overwhelmed or too sensitive should listen because it helps you trust yourself again. I can't even quite put into words how much that review means to me, because that is the goal. That is why I am here. I want to help you if you are feeling overwhelmed or too sensitive, to learn how to trust yourself again and have the self-assurance that no matter what happens, that you will be okay and you will be able to stay steady even when things don't go the way that you hoped they would, or even when you're feeling those really big emotions, or even when you are overstimulated. Regardless, I want you to have that self-assurance that everything will be okay. So thank you so much, Nan, for that review. It really does mean so very much to me. And I mentioned last week that there were some changes that were coming. And one of the things is I want to kind of stay on a topic for a few episodes in a row. And I know that in last week's celebration episode, I talked about, making decisions and moving forward. And we are going to spend some more time talking about decisions today. And some of it is like a mindset shift. And then some of it is some practical tools that you can use to help you make some decisions, because I know so many of us spend more time deciding than actually doing. And I know that because I have done it. And I also know that because you tell me as the listener, as my clients, you tell me that this is what is happening. And these are things that we work on in our sessions together. And so I just want you, as you are listening, to know that you are not alone. It is completely normal to overthink. And as highly sensitive women, it shows up for us all the time because we don't want to make the wrong decision because of what comes after that decision. And we don't want to upset people. And often we know the concepts and we know a lot of things, but we get kind of caught in these hesitation loops. And I'm excited. I really am excited to talk about this because I want to completely debunk, is that the right word? Debunk? The myth that there is such a thing as a right decision. We have been conditioned to believe that decisions are binary, that there is a right and a wrong decision. And often our overthinking is, it's often fear disguised as responsibility. Oh, I want to make a really responsible decision. I don't want to be irresponsible with my money, or I don't want to be irresponsible with making a job change, or whatever the case may be. And so we feel like if we just think it through enough, that we will know the right decision to make. And so we will be responsible women. And as we get older, at least this has been my experience, and I think, a lot of you can relate to this. I know I've talked about this with some of my clients, that we feel even more pressure as we are getting older to quote unquote choose correctly, because we really recognize how valuable our time is, and we don't want to waste it. And this is especially strong, this urge to not make a wrong decision that will waste time if we feel like we have made, quote, wrong decisions in the past. I know for me, I worry about losing more time. And, I have talked a little bit about my dating life. That was an area where I felt like I really struggled with making decisions for fear of losing time. Not just like time of my life, but the amount of time that I would then get to spend with my person. And I worry about losing time with coaching all of you because I love to do it so much. And I wish that I had started coaching when I was in my 20s. So this idea of worrying about making the right or wrong decision for fear of losing time, it's very relatable. And so many of you I know are battling that tug that's in you. And I just want to kind of put some of that to rest. And like I said, debunk the myth that there is a right or wrong decision, because decisions are not directional. Decisions are directional. They are not permanent. They just kind of take us in a direction. And then if that direction feels like we've gotten a little off course, then we just change the direction and change again. And that is how decisions actually work. So I want to share a story of, recently I had the opportunity to go to Arizona for the first time, and it was an absolutely incredible experience. I had never been, and the weather was unseasonably warm, and I got to meet my coach in person for the very first time, which was so cool. And I hiked Camelback Mountain, and it was interesting because as I was doing it, I had this very real presence and knowing that it was a crash course for decision making. And I even shared with my partner as we were hiking, like, oh my goodness, this is a crash course for decision making, because initially I was completely uncertain standing at the bottom of the mountain. I had no idea what to expect. I was kind of assessing where I should go. There were moments where hesitation really wasn't an option. You just had to make a decision and you had to go for it, because if you hesitated, you weren't going to have the momentum to get to the next spot, whether going up or coming back down. Sometimes you had to make those decisions very quickly, and sometimes it was to take a moment and pause and make slow, calculated moves. There were times where observing others and the path that they were taking was really helpful in my decision-making process. And there were times when either that wasn't helpful because I didn't want to follow their path, or there just wasn't someone immediately in front of me to follow, and I had to figure it out on my own. And really, the progress required commitment more than certainty. There was no perfect foothold anywhere along that mountain, but my momentum, and the more I climbed and went up, the more my confidence built. When I took moments to pause, it was not failure. I was just pausing to assess the situation, and the movement that we take reveals the next step. When I was standing at the bottom of the mountain and looking up at the very top and trying to assess what I was going to do, I couldn't even see the steps that were up there. I didn't even see a lot of the middle ground because it kind of curved and you couldn't see it from where we were standing. And so I didn't even know when I started the different steps that I would take and the path that I would need to follow. I was only until I had taken action and gotten to that part of the mountain that I could assess and decide what decision I was going to make, what path I was going to follow in that moment. And I really feel like that is what it is like in life. There are times when we need to make decisions quickly and we need to move forward and not look back. And there are times when we need to pause and really think through all of the different options and make a very calculated decision. There are times when we need to seek guidance and follow the path of others. And then there are times when we need to forge our own path and make a decision without seeking input or outsourcing our decisions. This to me was just the perfect experience that parallels what it is like to make every decision that we make in life. And I touched on some of this, excuse me. I will say Arizona was lovely, but I came back with some crud and it has been lingering for a very long time. So if any of you have experienced the crud that is going around this winter and spring, my heart feels for you because I too have been enjoying it. That's how I'm going to phrase it. I have been the lovely recipient of the crud for more than a month now, and this cough and just a little bit of congestion is still lingering. So thanks, Arizona, for that. I do love you, and I plan to return many, many times, and who knows what the future looks like, but I know I have some pretty big plans for Arizona and my life later. Anyhow, last week's episode, I touched on, staying stuck in inaction and that we don't know what steps to take until we start just with that first one. And then the next one is revealed to us as we start taking action. And, there's just rarely one perfect choice. Most of our decisions are adjustable and the clarity comes after we take the action. And indecision is a decision. And it took me a very long time to understand this, but choosing to not move still moves time forward. So for those of us who are worried about losing time, when we stay stuck in indecision, we are most definitely losing time. And there is a huge energy cost to stagnation. But self-trust is built through repetition, and confidence is the byproduct, not the prerequisite to taking action and to making a decision. And so this week, I want to really spend a lot of time focusing on some tools, some actionable steps that you can take, some tools that you can use to help in your decision-making process, especially if you find yourself consistently being stuck in indecision and not wanting to take action for fear of taking the wrong action. So tool number 1 is the 70% rule. And what I mean by that is if you feel like you have about 70% clarity, take action. And that avoids waiting until you have 100% clarity. And how you calculate that varies probably by decision, but also person to person. But if you feel like you have about 70% clarity, take action. Tool number 2 is time boxing your decisions. So if it is a small, relatively inconsequential decision, give it minutes. Recently I made a decision about a Starbucks order. Am I going to try something new? Am I going to stick with my usual, right? That's a pretty small decision, so give it minutes of your time. If it's a medium decision, give it hours. If it's a large decision, you can give it a couple of days, but put a time limit on how many days. And that putting it into boxes, is this a small, a medium, or a large decision? That kind of helps you begin the decision-making process by categorizing it, and then giving yourself a limit prevents the endless loop that we can so very easily get stuck in when we are trying to make a decision. Tool number 3 is a future me check-in. So ask yourself, which option would the self-assured version of me choose? And then choose that one. Think about what it would be like if you were in your body and you were completely self-assured and there was no way that you could possibly make a wrong decision because you knew that you would take care of yourself regardless of what the decision was. What decision would that woman make? Choose that one and move forward. And then tool number 5 is a reversible versus irreversible filter. So most of our choices are actually reversible, even though sometimes they don't necessarily feel like it. But we want to put them into a category. Is it reversible or is it irreversible? And then treat it with the proportional weight. If it is a reversible decision, it probably doesn't need as much thought and time given to making that decision as one that is an irreversible decision. So I just want to remind you that you don't need to be perfect and to have certainty to take a worthy step, because every step forward is a worthy step, and you will figure out the next one after you take the first one, and then you will figure out the next one after that. And as you move through it, you will build confidence to trust your decisions even more. And again, decisions are not verdicts or permanent most of the time. They're just directional. And I encourage you this week to choose one pending decision and then apply these tools that I have given you to make that decision and move forward. Do you have 70% clarity? Is it a small, medium, or large decision? And how much time should it get accordingly? What would the self-assured future version of you choose? And is it a reversible or irreversible decision? I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to continuing our decision-making conversation in next week's episode. Until then, take care.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who may be feeling like she's broken too? I'd love it if you'd leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It brings me so much joy to know this podcast is helping you. Now it's time for me to stop talking and go soothe my senses in nature. I'll meet you back here next week for another episode. Take care.